I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. The whole thing started last summer when my wife, Lisa, told me she was heading out of town on a business trip. She's usually pretty responsible about packing and planning, so I didn't think much of it. I kissed her goodbye in the morning, felt the cool breeze on my face as she drove off, and went back to my day. It was a typical busy week: work, some errands, watching TV with the kids during the evening. But then, a few days later, something didn't sit right. I was going through her purse after she'd left it on the table just out of curiosity. I know trust, right? But it's not about mistrust. It's about feeling like I was missing something. Anyway, I found a crumpled hotel receipt shoved to the bottom. It was for a hotel about 30 miles from where she said she was on that trip. My stomach dropped. I double-checked the date, and it was the same day she claimed to be in that business meeting. There was a second receipt, too, from a fancy restaurant that I'd never seen. Her mention. That night I couldn't sleep. Something prickled at my gut. I started digging through her phone, just quick checks, mostly out of instinct. Her texts were mostly work stuff, but then I saw a message from her friend Mike, a guy I'd always known as her coworker. The message was flirty, nothing explicit, but enough to make my skin crawl. She sent a "can't wait to see you tonight" just after she'd told me she was out of town. I felt a cold sweat break out. My mind spun with questions. How long had this been going on? Was I blind? I kept digging, and that's when I noticed lipstick on her collar. It was faint but unmistakable. I'd seen enough to know that whatever was happening, it wasn't just innocent. My fists clenched so tight my knuckles ached. All the signs pointed to one thing: she lied about where she was, and she cheated on me. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the stomach. I suddenly felt hollow, like I'd been punched in the gut and left breathless. I looked at the evidence scattered across my mind, the receipts, the texts, the lipstick, and realized I'd been living a lie, and I needed to decide what to do next. I didn't tell her right away. Instead, I kept everything locked inside, trying to think it through. I couldn't believe she'd do this, not after 10 years of marriage. I'd trusted her with my life, my secrets, everything. And now I had proof that she'd been sneaking around behind my back. I was furious, but there was also a strange, cold clarity. I knew I couldn't just brush this off and pretend nothing happened, but confronting her directly. I needed a plan. I had to be smart about this. If she was lying so smoothly about her trip, what else had she told me that was false? How deep did the deception go? I spent the next few days gathering my thoughts. I watched her, listened to her stories, noting every odd or defensive response. I was trying to decide whether I should blow up or try to catch her in the act again, see if she slipped up. But deep down, I knew I couldn't just confront her empty-handed. I needed something more concrete, something that would make her realize I knew everything. That's when the idea of revenge started forming in my mind. Not something impulsive, not anything violent or reckless. Something smart, subtle, but impactful enough to make her regret even thinking about betraying me. One night I sat at my desk, staring at the evidence spread out before me. I could see her face, her smile, her fake innocence, and it made me sick. I thought about all the things she'd taken from me, my trust, my confidence. But I also knew that I'd be damned if I let her get away with it. I would make her pay, but not in the way she probably thought. Not through shouting or accusations, but with a plan so calculated she'd never see it coming. That's the kind of revenge I was after. Now I'm just waiting for the right moment. I have my plan. It's tight, precise. I know how to execute it without warning, without hesitation. I want her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to see just how much I know and how far I'm willing to go. And when I do, I want her to understand that trust, once broken, can never truly be repaired. I've decided that I'll handle this on my own terms. And I'll make sure she regrets ever crossing that line. I can't say what happens next, but I won't be waiting much longer. The pieces are in motion, and I'm ready to see how she reacts when everything comes crashing down. Just one question keeps echoing in my mind. How deep is her deception, and how much damage can I really do before I finally walk away? Over the next few days, I kept my distance, watching her closely but not letting her suspect anything. The more I thought about her lies, the receipts, the texts, the lipstick, the angrier I got. It was like a simmering fire in my chest. I started noticing small things she did differently, like how she'd hurried to leave the house every morning or how she'd be overly cautious about her phone. It was obvious she was trying to cover her tracks, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of sneaking around anymore. One night, I decided I needed to get a better handle on her schedule. I set up a little surveillance at home, just enough to catch her if she slipped up again. No cameras, just watching, listening. I didn't want her to know I was onto her. That would ruin everything. I wanted her to think she was still in control, but I was just biding my time. I was in this for the long haul. I needed irrefutable proof, something that would leave no doubt. I remember the moment when I saw her get into her car at 8 a.m. heading somewhere. She looked nervous, almost guilty. I tracked her to a coffee shop about 10 miles away where she stayed for over an hour. I knew she was meeting someone, and I was pretty sure it was Mike. My stomach clenched tight. I could feel my fists tighten, the muscles in my jaw grinding. I wanted to storm in and confront her right then, but I knew I had to hold back. Patience, that was the key. Later, I went through her phone again, this time reviewing every message she'd sent or received that day. Sure enough, there was a message from Mike saying, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Been thinking about last time." That was the final straw. They'd been planning to meet again, probably behind my back. My fingers trembled as I read it. I felt a rush of heat rise in my cheeks, anger, betrayal, disgust all in one. I was sick of feeling helpless. That's when I started laying out my plan. I had to be clever, something big enough to make her realize I knew everything, but subtle enough that she'd never suspect I'd set it all in motion. I decided to get her to think I was clueless, while I secretly prepared my move. I wanted her to believe she was still in control, unaware that I was opening a trap just for her. I bought a cheap GPS tracker online, nothing fancy, just enough to slip onto her car. I had to know her whereabouts at all times. I also arranged for a small, hidden camera to be placed in the living room corner, where it could record her when she least expected it. I knew she'd slip up eventually, and I wanted to catch her on camera, at her most vulnerable. I'd need evidence that couldn't be denied if I decided to confront her with it later. One night I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the tiny device in my hand. I thought about how much trust I'd given her over the years, only to have it shattered in a matter of months. The betrayal felt like a punch to the gut again. My palms were sweaty, and I felt an icy coldness settle in my chest. I kept telling myself this was about justice, about making her pay for the pain she caused. I wanted her to see that the trust she threw away wasn't coming back. The plan was in motion. All I had to do now was wait. I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I also knew I couldn't go back to pretending everything was okay. Not after what I'd uncovered. I was tired of being blind, tired of being played for a fool. I was ready to make her see that I was not some naive husband she could manipulate anymore. I remember feeling that strange mix of anticipation and dread as I stared at the blinking red light of the GPS tracker. I knew that once she realized I was onto her, everything would change. I had no idea how she'd react. Would she try to cover her tracks, or would she just come clean? Either way, I was prepared for whatever came next. I was planning to surprise her, and I wanted that surprise to hit her hard. In the stillness of the night, I sat there, feeling the weight of my decision. My mind kept circling around the same questions. How much more would I learn? How far was she willing to go? And what would I do when I finally caught her? I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing: she was not going to get away with this without consequences. I was ready to see it through, no matter how it turned out. The days that followed felt like waiting in a storm's eye. I kept the tracker on her car, checking it obsessively, but nothing surprising happened, yet. She still went to her job, seemed to stick to her usual routines, but I could tell she was on high alert. She started acting more nervous around me. Little things, like how she'd avoid eye contact, or how she'd rush to hide her phone when I came into the room, made my stomach tighten. I could see the cracks in her facade, and I knew she was feeling the pressure. One evening she came home later than usual. I was sitting on the couch pretending to read, but my eyes kept flicking to the door. When she finally walked in, her face was pale and a little sweaty. She looked around as if she expected someone to be waiting for her. That's when I decided it was time. I kept my tone calm, but my voice was cold. Been out late tonight? I asked, watching her reaction carefully. She hesitated, then gave a small, tight-lipped smile. Just work, you know how it is. I leaned forward slightly. Really? Because I've been tracking your car. Her eyes flickered with surprise, then quickly went back to guarded. Tracking? Yeah, GPS on your car. I wanted to make sure you're safe, I said, voice smooth but deliberate. I also saw the messages, the ones between you and Mike, the ones that say, can't wait to see you tonight. Seems like your little meetings aren't just about work. Her face paled even more. You went through my phone. Didn't need to. I saw enough. And I've been watching your patterns. I've been waiting for the right moment. She looked like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. Instead, she just stared at me, eyes wide with panic. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anger. I was finally confronting her face to face, and she looked caught. I think it's time we talk, I said. You've been lying to me all along. I deserve the truth now. No more secrets, no more hiding. Her voice shook when she tried to defend herself. It's not what you think. No, Lisa. It's exactly what I think. I see you for what you are now. Cheating, lying, sneaking around behind my back. How long has this been going on? She swallowed hard, tears pooling in her eyes. It's been a mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Yeah, I said, voice rising just a bit. You didn't mean for it to go this far. Well, congratulations. You did, and I've had enough. I stood up, my fists clenched. You're going to pack your things and leave today. She looked at me, trembling, speechless. I knew this was just the beginning. I had my plan, my tools to make her regret everything she'd done. I wasn't going to let her walk out without consequences. For a moment, I wondered if I was doing the right thing. But then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, and I knew there was no turning back now. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small USB drive I'd hidden there. It contained the recordings from the camera setup I'd placed in the living room. I'd been recording her for days. Now, I pressed play on my phone and showed her the footage. Her face twisted in shock as she saw herself talking to Mike, planning their next meeting. The look in her eyes was raw, guilty, desperate, defeated. This is just the start, I told her, voice cold. You'll leave and I'll make sure everyone finds out what you did. You wanted to play games. You'll find I'm better at this than you think. She backed away, sobbing now. Please, I wasn't thinking. I was stupid. I don't want to hear it, I said. You made your choice. Now I make mine. I handed her a bag packed with her essentials. Get your stuff and don't come back. She looked like she wanted to argue, to say she loved me, but she knew it was pointless. As she grabbed her bag, I handed her the keys to the house. Here are the keys. Consider this my final gift. If you try to come back, I'll have the locks changed and the police involved. She took them, silent, eyes full of regret. I watched her walk out the door, knowing I'd finally cut her loose. My stomach was tight, but there was a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. When she was gone, I stayed in the silence, feeling the emptiness settle in. The house felt colder without her. I kept the USB in my hand, knowing I had the evidence. I'd end it with her for good, but I also knew I'd have to face the fallout. Still, I was done trusting her, done pretending everything was fine. I'd made my move, and now I was waiting to see what would happen next. The last thing I did that night was lock the door and sit on the couch. I stared at the empty space where she'd been. For now I had peace, at least enough to think. I knew this wasn't the end, but I'd taken the first step. And honestly, it felt damn good. The house was eerily quiet after she left. I could feel the cold air from the open door and the silence inside pressed against my ears. I sat there on the couch, staring at the USB drive in my hand, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. The adrenaline from confrontations had worn off, replaced by a dull ache in my chest. I kept replaying everything in my mind, her face when I showed her the footage, her trembling hand grabbing her bags, her desperate eyes. Part of me wanted to scream, to rage, but I knew staying calm was essential. I was already thinking about what came next. I had played my hand, but I knew there would be fallout. The first thing I needed was to secure my own footing, protect myself, my reputation, my sanity. I'd kept quiet about my plan. No one knew I'd been recording her. I wanted to keep it that way until I was ready. I had to be precise, careful. I couldn't afford to make a mistake now. I reached for my phone and dialed a trusted friend. "Hey man, I need some advice. Can we meet tomorrow?" He answered quickly, sensing the seriousness in my voice. "Sure, what's going on?" I hesitated for a moment, then told him everything about the receipts, the texts, the GPS, the recordings. I kept my tone steady, but inside I was still boiling. "I've got her out of the house now, but I want to cut ties clean. No mess, no drama. I need to know how to do that without giving her a reason to come back or spin some story." He listened carefully. "Sounds like you're in a good spot, honestly. Just be sure to get legal stuff ready if you're worried about the house or finances. And don't let her manipulate you into feeling guilty. You're right to walk away. You don't owe her anything after that." The truth of his words sank in. I was finally starting to see the situation clearly. The betrayal had shattered the trust I'd built over years, but I wasn't going to let her drag me down with it. I was closing the door behind her, literally and figuratively. Later that night, I sat in the dark of the living room, staring at the blank TV screen. My fingers trembled as I clutched the USB. I knew I had to decide whether to confront her again or wait. My instincts told me to wait, let her stew, wonder what I had. I was going to use that footage as leverage, but I also felt a strange desire to hear her confess outright, to see her reaction when she knew I had everything. I pushed those thoughts aside. Patience. That's what this called for. I needed to keep my head clear. The more she thought I was clueless, the better. I had to stay one step ahead. I was already planning my next move, setting things up so I could walk away with as little damage as possible. I didn't want to burn everything down out of impulse. I wanted her to know I had won without a fight, without a scream. The next morning, I woke up with a new resolve. I decided I'd send her a simple message, short, cold, to the point. No anger, no pleading, just the facts. I wrote, "You're gone, don't try to. Contact me, I have proof of everything, don't come back." I hesitated before hitting send. Once I did, that would be it, no turning back. She would know I'd been serious all along. I felt a flicker of satisfaction. For years, I'd been the steady, patient husband. Now I was taking control. I wasn't going to let her ruin me with lies and betrayal. If she wanted to leave, I'd make damn sure she did it on my terms. My mind was already racing through the possibilities, the ways I could make her regret ever crossing me. I packed a small bag just in case I needed to leave myself. Nothing crazy, just essentials. I double-checked the house for anything I might want to keep. I felt strangely detached, like I was observing myself from outside. This wasn't the man I used to be. This was someone new, hardened but resolved. As I stepped outside, I looked back at the house. The quiet was deafening. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. I knew this was just the beginning. The truth was out now. I'd done what I needed to do. Whatever came next, I was ready. I was done being played for a fool. I left her a note on the kitchen counter. "I know everything. Take your things. Don't come back. I'll be fine." Then I turned and walked away, the door closing softly behind me. The weight was lifted, but the ache in my chest remained. That ache was the price of betrayal, but I'd pay it if it meant I finally took back control. Walking down the street, I felt lighter, even as the doubts crept in. I'd sealed my fate, but I also knew I'd start healing from this. Whether she realized it or not, I'd won this round. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally standing on my own 2 feet again. The days that followed felt like living in a different world. I kept replaying everything in my mind, her face, her trembling voice, the footage I had, trying to process what I'd done. Honestly, it was a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Part of me felt like I'd just escaped a nightmare, but another part was hollowed out, like I'd lost something I could never get back. Still, I knew I'd done the right thing. Confronting her, walking away, protecting myself, it was necessary. After I sent her the message, I didn't hear from her for a couple of days. That silence was deafening. I'd expected outraged tears, maybe even begging, but instead it was like she'd disappeared into a void. I guess she knew she'd pushed me too far. The house sat empty, and I kept busy setting up my next steps, talking to a lawyer, figuring out how to divide the assets, preparing myself for the fallout. One afternoon, I decided to check the footage I'd recorded. I wanted to see her reactions again. Watching her on the video, you could see the moment she realized she was caught. Her eyes widened, her face drained of color. She fidgeted, trying to deny it, but the evidence was staring her right in the face. I played it all back, feeling that familiar surge of anger. She'd lied to me for months, played me for a fool, and I was done. That's when I got a call from her. I hesitated before answering. My heart was pounding. When I finally picked up, her voice was trembling. Why did you do this? I never wanted to hurt you. It was just a mistake. I took a deep breath. I didn't want to sound angry, just firm. Lisa, you lied to my face for months. You betrayed my trust, and I have the proof. I don't want to hear apologies. I want the truth. Why? There was silence on the other end. Then she whispered, it was just a moment of weakness. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please, can we talk? No, I said, cutting her off. There's nothing to talk about. I've seen enough. You made your choice. I'm done with the lies. I hung up before she could say more. That call was a clear message. She didn't get to manipulate me anymore. I was moving forward on my terms. I knew she'd probably try to worm her way back, but I was done. There was no more room for her betrayal in my life. I'd cut her loose cleanly, decisively. The next step was to start the process of healing. I couldn't ignore the fact that I'd been hurt deeply. Trust was shattered, and I'd have to rebuild myself from the ground up. But I also knew I'd come out of this stronger. All the years I'd given her, all the trust had been tested, and I'd come through it. That realization made me stand taller. I could finally breathe again. I also reached out to a friend who specialized in counseling. Just talking to someone who understood what I'd been through helped more than I expected. They told me, you did what you had to. It's okay to feel angry, hurt, or confused. Just don't let it define you. You're not the one who betrayed the vows. You're the one who finally took control. That advice stuck with me. I started focusing on myself, getting back into shape, rethinking my routines, and most importantly, taking care of my mental health. I refused to let her actions define me or my future. I told myself I was better off without the lies and games. One thing I knew for sure, I wouldn't be rushing into anything new right away. I needed time to heal, to process everything. But I also knew I'd be cautious moving forward. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and I didn't want to be naive again. Looking back, I realize I was caught up in the illusion of a perfect life. But now I see that sometimes you have to face the truth head-on, no matter how painful. Whether I stay single or try to rebuild my life, one thing's clear: I'm finally in control of my own story again. And that, I think, is the biggest victory of all. The weeks that followed were a blur of small victories and hard lessons. I kept busy, focusing on myself, joining a gym, reconnecting with friends, and trying to rebuild some sense of normalcy. Every day felt like a step away from the chaos I'd been dragged into. The house I shared with her was eerily quiet, and honestly, at first, that silence was deafening. But slowly it became a kind of peace. No more lies, no more sneaking around. Just me, my space, and the clarity of knowing I'd done what I needed to do. I remember waking up one morning feeling lighter somehow. I looked around the empty house and realized how much I'd been holding on to: the hope, the trust, the illusion of a happy life. And now I was finally free. The betrayal still lingered, but it no longer had power over me. I'd taken back control, and that was a victory I'd carry forward. One afternoon, I sat at my desk and carefully placed the USB drive into a small, locked box I bought. It was a symbol of everything I'd uncovered and everything I'd decided to leave behind. I knew I wouldn't need it anymore, but I kept it as a reminder, proof that I'd faced the truth and come out stronger. I also drafted a short letter for her, one I never planned to send but felt I had to write. It read, "You chose your path, I chose mine. I wish you the best, but I can't have you in my life anymore. The trust is broken beyond repair. Take care." I folded it neatly and placed it inside the box with the USB. That was my closing statement, an acknowledgement that I was done fighting, done pretending, done trusting. As I handed over the house keys to a lawyer, I felt a strange sense of finality. This chapter was over. I'd faced the pain, the betrayal, and now I was ready to move on. I knew I'd carry the scars with me, but I also knew I'd grow stronger because of it. Trust is fragile. I learned that the hard way, and it takes a long time to rebuild once broken. But I was determined to heal and move forward. Sitting in my car, I looked back at the house one last time. The windows were dark, the driveway empty. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. The wind brushed against my face like a fresh start. I whispered to myself, "This is over. You're finally free." And I meant it. I finally understood that sometimes you have to take control of your own life, even when it hurts. Trust has to be earned, and sometimes it's better to walk away than to keep fighting for something that's already lost. I learned that lesson in a way I never wanted, but I'll carry it with me forever. Walking away from that house, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was done holding onto the pain, the anger. I was ready to rebuild, to trust myself again, and to find happiness on my own terms. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I'd come out of this stronger. And that's what I want everyone to remember. No matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how shattered your trust, you have the power to take control. You can rebuild, even when it feels impossible. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply walking away with your dignity intact and your future waiting for you.